We are go for liftoff in T minus 30.
It's the Weiliotis podcast.
I like it.
Hello and welcome back, all of you beautiful people, to episode 3 of the Weiliotis podcast, where we break down a particular movie or director's body of work, break down its various facets, and share our love for the motion picture. With me, as always, is my good friend, writing partner, the great, the wonderful Mikey Wheel. How you doing, Mikey?
Hi, how we all doing? Third episode, very cool. I think we have about 25 downloads for the Uncut Gems and about 32 for Cabin in the Woods.
No, actually, I think it's 35 for the first and then 32. So we're in the 30s.
Oh, really?
Both.
Oh,
yeah.
perfect.
Maybe even more. I haven't checked the stats in a couple of days, but no, I mean, good little start there for sure.
Yeah, and we're still working on our website. We just got to buy the domain. And then, Twitter, Instagram. I know we're Weiliotis on Twitter, and then on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, I believe we're the Weiliotis podcast. You can email us, the Weiliotis podcast at gmail.com. And then once again, we'll get out of the way. This podcast has nothing to do with Ray Liotta. It just has to do with our two names, Wheel and Weiliotis, which sounds like Ray Liotta. So now that we got that out of the way, what do you want to just talk about the movie first? This is exciting, I think. This is exciting because Tom and I just finished watching this movie. It's not a movie we've seen a bunch. We haven't even really talked to each other yet about our overall thoughts. So this podcast is I guess exciting because it's everything just done in like real time about us discovering what we thought about it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think there is a lot to discuss with this movie, as there is with most Spike Lee movies, because he's a very eccentric, very unique director. And Da 5 Bloods is, in many ways, I think a lot of its reception was very well received. I think a lot of critics and even audiences kind of consider this to be one of his better movies in a long, long time. And in many ways, I kind of feel the same. But we'll get into that pretty soon. Mikey, do you first want to maybe delve into some movie news and maybe some stuff other stuff we've watched recently?
Yeah, and a big reason we're doing Da 5 Bloods, it's on Netflix right now. You can watch it with your subscription. It's a Spike Lee movie. I loved BlacKkKlansman. I've seen a couple of his other movies of more recent. But we also did this because Chadwick Boseman is one of the stars of this movie. As you probably know by now, he passed away a few weeks ago of cancer, and he was just like one of those people that was a true, I guess, icon and real superhero in Hollywood. He was going to hospitals and visiting kids with cancer while he had cancer. Nobody really knew about this. I mean, he was like going through chemo and radiation while being Black Panther and all of these things. So I know he was just buried in South Carolina. We wanted to do this to kind of honor him. If you have not seen his movies, he did 42 as Jackie Robinson. He's done, of course, Black Panther. He was in the most recent Avengers movies. And he was just like a very good actor who played other people in biopics and stuff like that.
Yeah, so. His presence on screen is like undeniably great. Like he kind of just radiates energy and in everything he was in. And it was a shock to everybody. Like nobody knew, the fact that he kept this a secret for 4 or 5 years is insane. And especially after watching Da 5 Bloods, like watching it after he had passed away, it kind of it adds a different layer to the experience, I think. And but yeah, it's so unfortunate. It's so unfortunate that he passed away at such a young age. And yeah, we kind of felt it was right to do this movie for that in that regard, and also because of how this movie touches upon many, many very timely aspects of our current society and like what we're kind of going through right now. So it just felt right. And again, it's also one that's very easily accessible. You can watch this on Netflix right now if you wanted to. So
the movie definitely hits harder with Chadwick Boseman passing away. The movie is basically about 4 African American Vietnam vets, and basically they're going back to Vietnam in present day, and they're going back to one, find the body of Chadwick Boseman, who is one of their kind of friends and in their platoon in Vietnam, and they want to find his remains so they can finally bring him home, lay him to rest, get the clarity for his family. And then at the same time, the five of them found a big collection of gold back in Vietnam, and they buried it, and they said, one day we're going to come back for this. So for me, right off the bat, what I loved about it was, and I'm writing a horror movie that's kind of like this, but I love any movie where people get together after a long time and they're reuniting. I love the first Grown Ups movie with Adam Sandler. 10 Years is one of my favorite movies. Like earlier, Oscar Isaac, he sings in it. Everybody's in that movie. Chris Pratt, Ari Grainer, Justin Long. It's phenomenal. I love any movie where people get together after a long time and they kind of, talk about how they're all wealthy and happy and in amazing marriages, and then throughout the movie you kind of learn more about them. Like in this movie, once again we have spoilers. One of the guys was very wealthy and had a black Amex card and ran a bunch of car dealerships. He pays for all their rooms in Vietnam. He's paying for everything, and about 75% towards the later parts of the movie, you find out that he's completely broke. He's had a bunch of failed marriages. He lost all of his dealerships, bad investments, hasn't paid taxes. And then the movie really starts to get real. And I think everybody has that. Everybody has that. You all get back after college for Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever it is, and you kind of all talk about these great things in your lives. And then one of you is vulnerable, and the rest of you is like, okay, let's actually talk. And hey, we all have each other. Why are we trying to impress each other? We're best friends. Let's just be honest and real and there for each other.
Right. And you're right. And I think it's that kind of aspect about it that makes these kind of like reunion movies really great. And also, have you ever seen what movie? The World's End? Simon Pegg and Nick Frost, the Edgar Wright movie.
Yeah.
It's technically the unofficial like third movie in the Cornetto trilogy. It was Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and then World's End.
Yeah, the trilogy is called like the ice cream truck trilogy.
Cornetto, yeah, because the Cornetto, I think that's how you pronounce it. The little ice cream cones you can get. Yeah. So like because you like see like them eating it, or you see like a rapper in the movie somewhere, and that movie is a great example of that too, because it's all about those four friends that are getting together to do one last like kind of like kind of relive like their like teenage like college years, and obviously they end up going back to their old town, and it's all run by like it's all taken over by aliens and whatnot. But that's a good one too, because that's one that also, again, it's like there's a sense of like hiding your past from people you kind of admire and wanting to display like a better side of you, when in reality it's like there's other truths that kind of come out throughout the process of the movie. And that's a good really good example, or a good really great part of the Five Bloods, which we'll get into very, very soon. But first off, Mike, you had some movie news you wanted to talk about, right?
Yeah, so these days I'm a little more TV than movie, so I usually have more TV stuff. Today is kind of mixed. For kind of TV and movie news, Blythe Manor, the follow-up to The Haunting of Hill House, that teaser came out. There's a poster that came out with all their faces on the floor. They're saying it's going to be way scarier. It's kind of Ryan Murphy-esque with American Horror Story. Everybody from the first season's coming back. They're just playing different characters. There's dolls in this. It's, I think, about these kids who are being babysat by somebody, and the babysitter realizes the house is not what they think it is. But I already can't wait to see it. So I'm excited for that. I know you can say more about this. The trailer to Freaky just dropped. So Blumhouse made Happy Death Day, which is pretty much Groundhog's Day as a horror movie. They're taking these kind of older classic movies. Freaky is literally Freaky Friday. It's basically this serial killer and this high school girl who's going through, boy troubles and all that. They wake up in the one another's body, and basically it's kind of like Jack Black in the Jumanji movies. You now have Vince Vaughn playing this 13-year-old girl, and she's playing him, who's a serial killer. It's called Freaky, and Stephen King, just from the trailer alone, is already saying that Vince Vaughn deserves Oscar buzz for it. And watch the trailer, and Tom can tell you more, because he's a little more closer to home with that movie.
Yeah, and I don't think I've brought it up yet in the first 2 episodes, but I actually worked on that movie in a security capacity. I've been security personnel, so specifically a supervising officer, working on film and television sets for the past 2 years now, and that they filmed that last year. I want to say they started around the October 2019 point, and then actually earlier they started maybe like August, September, and worked until the end of the year. And I had the pleasure of being a supervisor on that the entire time, which was really the one time I got to actually see every single set. So when I watched the trailer, I quite literally like could be like, oh, I remember that night I was working overnight that day, or like I remember that set.
That's so cool. Specifically
the scene when in the trailer when you actually see is it, what's her name? Is it Catherine Newton? Am I getting that right? The main girl in it. She's killed in it on the field when she, I guess after like a football game or something. I remember being there. They filmed there for a couple of weeks, and then when she wakes up in Vince Vaughn's body, he's in like his lair, like where he kills people. That set, I actually got to walk around a little bit. I remember that was crazy. Like they just had all like the fake like skeletons and all like the weird like serial killer props everywhere. So and you know, that was like a dream, because it's like obviously both Mike and I love horror movies, so the fact I got to work that closely on a Blumhouse movie too was pretty sweet. And
Blumhouse is the best these days.
Yeah, and it's a great idea. Like you said, it's cool taking these. You know, they're obviously going back to these like older in more comedic movies, and then being like, wait a minute, these are actually a little bit more fucked up, and like let's kind of focus more on like the sinister side of them. And I think Freaky Friday is kind of a perfect one to do. And you know, pre-recording this, Mikey brought up, you know, actors like playing other characters. Like you brought up Jumanji earlier. The two new Jumanjis were like The Rock, you know, and all these characters in the video game are like playing other people. And that's always a fun idea. So in this one, the fact that you have like Vince Vaughn, who's like technically playing like a high school girl, I think that just,
and he's like 7 feet in real life.
Yeah, he's incredibly tall. Like that dude, he's Vince Vaughn's a big dude. So like that will be funny. I think there's so many good scenarios they could get into, and yeah, it looks really creative, looks really colorful. I think
the trailer's hilarious.
Yeah, there's one great line where I think her two friends, like, you know, she's in Vince Vaughn's body and he's trying to like reach his friends, because obviously, you know, she wants to get help, and they know who he is. They know he's a serial killer, and it's both a black high schooler student and a gay kid, and they go, we're black and gay, we're gonna die, like, you know. So they're kind of like already poking fun at those kind of like general tropes you see in slasher movies,
the campy horror movies.
Yeah, so I think it's gonna be great. I think it looks like they're just going all in, like really having fun with this idea. So I'm looking forward to it for sure.
Tom and I are working on our own. We're writing a movie that is for sci-fi. And by that, we mean sci-fi has no idea who we are. We just want to sell to sci-fi. We're going to write a movie for Blumhouse, which once again, nobody's greenlit us or given us anything for it. But like Blumhouse is kind of where you want to be for horror these days, especially Blumhouse and Monkey Paw, Jordan Peele's production. I mean, they're behind some of the best horror movies as of recently. So yeah, it'd be a dream to one day we'll say, listen to our third podcast. We wanted to be on a Blumhouse production, and now we're writing our own.
Yeah,
that'd be nice. So yeah, the Freaky looks great. Not comedy. Well, actually horror comedy as well. Adam Sandler's Hubie Halloween. Is that how you say it?
I think so. Yeah. No, I think it's Hubie Halloween.
They dropped the trailer for that. It's one of his Netflix movies. It's pretty much every cast of SNL, current and past, and then Claire from Modern Family, and also from Happy Gilmore. She's in it as well, reuniting the two of them. It's pretty much every SNL alum and current member, and anybody who's ever been in an Adam Sandler movie. Yeah. He plays this kind of off adult in this small town. I think it's in Salem, Massachusetts. And he always is trying to stop crime that doesn't really exist. And then some kind of supernatural thing happens, and the town, he has to make the town believe him. And it just looks slapstick funny. You know, after Uncut Gems, this is another one of those movies where he's like, hey, this is for me and all my friends to get together for a few months and have some fun. I think it looks good. I think it looks funny.
It-
Dumb
it-
funny, but not in a bad way.
Yeah, honestly, like the trailer kind of reminds me of like one of the Ernest movies. Like, you know, this.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's like
Yeah.
it's just like this kind of like, you know, stupid idea, but like it's clearly like they're trying to have fun with it, and you know, like people. Even after something like Uncut Gems, people are still kind of like iffy. A lot of people are still iffy on Adam Sandler. Like most of his movies are kind of just these dumb throwaway comedies.
Campy.
But yeah, but like I don't know. We've talked about it in the last podcast. I think even like movies like Happy Gilmore or The Wedding
Click.
Singer or like any of these movies. I mean, there's some great movie like comedies he's in where he really is like good in them. He just has that right presence on screen and the right charisma to like sell these kind of more outlandish ideas. So like this one looks. I mean, and again, we're both suckers for like horror movies and Halloween based thing, like IP. So like I think I'm kind of looking forward to it. I think it'll be fun.
And I went to college right next to Salem, Massachusetts, and who
Mhm.
knows how much of it is filmed there, but just a movie that takes place on the North Shore is exciting because we'll definitely see some places that we recognize. You know, both having lived in Massachusetts. So that's exciting. The Walking Dead is ending after the next season. I've become more a fan of Fear the Walking Dead. I binged it a few months ago and got caught up and am behind on The Walking Dead a few episodes, but they're ending it after season 11. They're doing a couple spin-off shows. They're doing the movies with Rick. I'm kind of sad to see it go. I'm one of the few people that stuck with it since day one, and you live in Atlanta, so you probably know a lot about the production and all of that. And
well,
you know,
it's huge down here. Obviously, like everyone tends to love it down here. I know people
Yeah.
that worked on it. And it's funny because when I first moved here, like the first 2 months when I was started security and I was at all these sets, I remember one day I was in like East Atlanta and I didn't even know that this whole time I was working right across from where they filmed Morgan's house, like in season 1. And
cool.
yeah, so like, and it's funny, I only knew that because a fan drove by like later in my shift and she stopped and she was taking pictures of it. And you know, it wasn't even I didn't like at first I didn't say anything because it's like, you know, that she was across the street. That wasn't what I was or that's not what I was securing. So like, but I walked over and I was like, hey, I'm like, what's going on? How you doing today? And she's like, I'm just the biggest Walking Dead fan. She's like, that's Morgan's house right there. And like,
Cool.
you know, it's funny. There are some really like fanatics, and you know, it's funny because like that show, you know, it's crazy that it's almost been an exact 10 years since it was first released, which is insane. Because I remember watching that
Wow.
with my mom. We both, you know, I was in high school at the time. I remember we were both really excited about that. You know, zombies were like, still are like, you know, very popular. But
Oh yeah.
10 years ago, I think it was like Walking Dead was kind of this resurgence of their popularity. And I stuck with that show up until season 7, I want to say. I stopped in 2017.
Who was the bad guy? Who was the antagonist that season?
What's his name?
Negan?
Negan.
Okay, yeah.
And I stopped right. It seemed like Rick and his group were starting to get more control. And I think I remember one of the last episodes I watched, he was like with his guys after kind of getting his ass handed to him, and he's like, we're going to war, and like a bunch of guys like just put like threw their guns in the air, and like, so I probably stopped at like the wrong time. I probably missed a lot of good stuff, but like,
Yes.
I don't know, it sucks because to me, The Walking Dead has a lot going for it. So many great actors in it. There's so many good scenarios. It's clearly like there's some amazing episodes, but I think it's just, to me, it was so inconsistent. Like there was seasons that really dragged on. There was sections of seasons that didn't have, to me, to have the best writing, or it seemed like they kind of wrote themselves into a wall. Also, like there was a lot of I mean, clearly with a concept like this, you're gonna have repetition, but after a while, it's like I kind of got sick of watching them, you know, wander through the woods.
In Atlanta, never leaving Atlanta.
Well, like they'd wander through the woods, starve for a little bit. They'd find a new compound. It's great for a little bit. Oh wait, they're evil. They overthrow them. We gotta leave. Back in the woods. It kind of felt like that was just rinse and repeat. And I don't know. And again, I get it because it's like that's the concept we have at hand. It's the end of the world. There's no structural system in place. But like, I don't know. I almost felt like there was just more they could have done. But you know, I mean, I don't. Again, after season 7 or whenever I stepped, I don't know what they did. I've not been following it. I've had something spoiled, like who dies and whatnot, but I don't really know much.
That almost made me stop watching it. It was
really?
like almost. It was too graphic for TV. It was also sad.
Really?
But it was like almost too graphic. It was very intense and hard to watch. But I love Negan. Jeffrey Dean Morgan's mom told him not to take the role because everybody would hate him in real life, and he's typecast for me because that's mostly what I know him from. But yeah, I love it. I've stuck with it. And I would say to, people like you who said it's the kind of repeated things. A lot of people fell off after season 2 or 3 when they stay at the farm with Herschel and Maggie. And I just kind of say to anybody, like, it's realistic, which I think you were getting at, but like it's realistic in terms of like in a zombie apocalypse, you're not going to drive across America for the next 12 years. You're going to find somewhere to settle, see what those people are like, and weed out the good versus the bad. So I like that part of The Walking Dead is it's realistic. And to some people, I know that's kind of like boring and they want more of the action, where there's some episodes where it's just
I will
talking
say,
about crops.
you will say these episodes, especially like season 3, when they're actually established at the prison, and they're actually utilizing like it is, there's kind of like a fantasy of people who want to live in a zombie apocalypse. I remember I at one point was kind of like in that camp where it's like, oh, like wouldn't it be fun to like wander around every day and not have to pay bills? It's like, but it's like,
your job is to like grow carrots.
Yeah, like you just settle down somewhere and you like kind of have a homestead. There is kind of like a weird appeal about that, even though like it'd be fucking difficult and really scary. But like, but there is like an appeal, and they kind of feed into that in the show. Where like, it's kind of fun watching them utilize the prison and make rooms and like and grow food and like and how there's issues with like their and how many issues arise even when they're in some kind of stable predicament. So like I said, to me it's like, I understand what you're saying, like it's realistic that they would want to find a place and stay there and whatnot. It's not so much that aspect, it's more, like I said, more or less the situations they find themselves in, where I feel like they could have just done more or been more dynamic with it, or I don't know. But overall, I mean, it's an ambitious show, and like I said, I think overall I still like it. Maybe, I don't know, maybe one day I'll go through it all, like literally go through all of it. But so
Fear the Walking Dead's about 5 or 6 seasons in, and it's amazing.
And that's same times frame. It's just on the West Coast, right? That's
a little bit before, so it's kind of it starts as a prequel, but then it has a crossover sequel from people like Morgan left The Walking Dead and he's on Fear now as like the main character. A couple other people have moved over. All right, I would say movies we recently watched. See if we can run through that. For me, I know that I run a website called Drift Mouse Entertainment Satire. We're going to start hosting the podcast on there as well. I know. Tom and I both like to write movie reviews. I've been watching so many movies that I want to start working on that movie review section, especially with the movies we watch. I think that we should watch a movie like The Five Bloods and then write a review of it and put it on the website, because why not? We're already talking about it. So for people who don't want to listen to us talk for an hour and a half, we can just write a review and kind of post it that way. But for me, I've been watching so much reality TV. I think I might have said this last time. I pushed myself to binge watch a bunch of horror movies over the past week. I watched 1B, Blumhouse's Sweetheart, The Perfection, which is one of the most twisted movies I've ever seen and has one of the best last scenes and endings, very disturbing. We Summon the Darkness, horror comedy with Alexandra Daddario. Horns with Daniel Radcliffe, which is kind of like the horror comedy-ish version of Ricky Gervais's what was the Invention of Lying. It's very interesting. He kind of becomes the devil and people confess all their sins to him. And then Creep, which I think, have you ever seen Creep? The Mark Duplass one?
Not yet. I really want to, though.
Yeah, there's 2 of them out. I think they're doing a third. They're like hour and 17 minute quick found footage horror movies. I'm excited to watch the second. So I'd like to start writing reviews for all of these and just getting them out there. But what have you been watching, TV or movies?
More TV. I've actually, last episode I talked about watching Tenet, the new Christopher Nolan movie, and also Writing on the Bathroom Walls. But other than that, other than The Five Bloods, I really haven't watched many other movies. I've been watching more TV just because I've been getting back to work lately, and I'm also in the process of moving. But what I have been watching is season 2 of The Boys, which is on Amazon Prime.
I just started season 1.
How many episodes did you watch? Well, anyway, isn't that first episode crazy?
The whole show, it's one of those things that we talked about last episode, like Uncut Gems, where it's like, why bother writing? Nothing is as smart as what we do in the Shadows and My Boys. I think they're the 2 smartest shows. It's almost too disturbing for me. Watching all these horror movies, 6 in a row, whatever I watched, some of them really hit hard because it's been so long since I've watched torture and horror that like I don't know, maybe I'm getting older and more vulnerable, but like a lot of it were like some of them were very disturbing. Watching The Boys, one, I love how you learn who the boys actually are. It takes a few episodes to catch on to who they're talking about, which
Yeah.
group,
Yep.
which group.
And it takes a
Yeah,
couple episodes for them to even like form the group itself.
yes.
So,
I just saw the episode with the plane crash and the dolphin.
dude,
Um,
that
yeah.
plane sequence, man, it's like it's so sad. It's
I immediately said I don't want to watch this show anymore because it was just, I don't know, maybe having a baby on the way, you start to get more vulnerable and
Yeah.
offended by things. But that episode is extremely difficult to watch. But besides that, yeah, The Boys is literally some people in a writer's room said, what if Captain America and Aquaman were not the heroes we thought they were, and they were using their heroism for bad and evil behind clothes. I mean, it's a brilliant show. They all have their own lawyers and agents and press people, and
it very much feels like a response to like even like modern like corporate like Hollywood in a sense, where you have people
Yes.
that are like, you know, viewed as like these amazing people, but behind the scenes they're probably not as great. They're probably exploitative and like just not the best people. And yeah, to me the Boys feels like what, and I do like these movies kind of, but like this feels like what Deadpool was trying to do, where it's trying to be more of like like a distinct take on the superhero genre and kind of flip it on its head. Like where this is like every episode, like it has something insane in it, and it also feels grounded. Like, you know, you kind of understand them, even as like disturbing as like Homelander's motives are. You kind of understand why he's doing it in the first place, and it never feels gratuitous just for the sake of being gratuitous. Like they always have a reason for it. But so far there are, I think, 4 or 5 episodes of season 2, and
I can't wait.
actually they've been doing 1 episode a week now. So I think episode 5 comes out tomorrow, or actually today, I think. But season 2 is really good so far. It's kind of it's delving more into Homelander. It's delving more into these characters we didn't learn too much about in the first episode. And again, it's still just as messed up as season 1. So like
I love Aya Cash too. I know she's in the second season.
Yes.
I don't know if she's in the first, but she was in
just the second.
She was on that show on FX. What was it called?
Oh,
You're the Worst.
You're the Worst. Yeah.
Yeah, which is, did you watch that whole show?
No, and I got to, because it's incredibly like just. It's so different. I love it so much.
I wish it were still on, but I can't wait to watch the rest of the show. But if it gets more disturbing, it's going to be hard to watch because that episode was, and I think it's a very real show because like besides Jon Favreau's character with Iron Man, you never really see the kind of politicized or, you know, who is Captain America's press person. That's what The Boys is about. The Boys is about like, even though these people have superpowers and can kill anybody, they still are in the hands of politicians. They're still in the hands of billionaires. They still have to report at the end of the day to the governors of the town and kiss ass. And that part is super interesting. But yeah, basically The Boys is about a guy who decides that he wants to take down these superheroes after one of them accidentally kills the love of his life. I mean, that's kind of
Huey is what's his name? He's Dennis Quaid's son.
Yeah, and Meg Ryan. Yeah,
Meg Ryan. Yeah, who he looks like literally like perfectly like
Yep.
those like literally like that's like what he looks like. Just a combination of both those people, and like Michael Shannon. He looks like Michael Shannon a little bit too.
Okay, I can see that.
Yeah,
I love Michael Shannon.
You know, there's the thing. It starts off. Yeah, he's like. You know, he has no idea about this world. But he's in the superheroes. Like he loves like the Seven, which is what they're called.
Yep.
And then
the Soups.
Yep. And then obviously one of them kills his girlfriend, and then he gets picked up by Carl Urban, who kind of forms the Boys, who are trying to take them down. For also, he's amazing in it. Carl Urban is like one of the coolest motherfuckers.
And I don't even know him from that much. It's sometimes hard to understand him in Frenchie because of the very hard accents they both have.
Yeah.
Don't tell me, because I'm only on episode 6. If Frenchie ever dies on The Boys, I will stop watching it because he's one of my favorite
Yeah,
characters.
I think he might be my favorite. He's awesome.
He's so funny. And yeah, I mean the comedic relief of it. It's a very, very dark show, but there's definitely comedic relief. And yeah, it's just a cool way to think about things.
Yeah, it's handled the tone is handled perfectly. Like it's able to go from being like have these really funny moments, and then a second later, it's just the worst thing ever. But it doesn't. It's not jarring. It feels like it just feels right. So
it has to have comedy. It's like watching an Eli Roth movie. His movies are so funny because they're so dark and disturbing and just they twist your stomach so much that you have to have comedic relief. If The Boys were a drama, I think it wouldn't be for everyone. But there's so
yeah.
much comedy and comedic relief that it's a little easier.
Well, the thing is, it's like especially in a day now where like for years and years, this idea that audiences want like more like gritty, realistic superhero movies, and it's gone to a point where like that's kind of annoying. Like it's almost like all right, like we get it, like you had a dark past, and like it almost feels like these movies almost feel self-serious. Where this kind of pokes again, it's kind of expertly poking fun at all these tropes and all these ideas about like what superheroes would actually be like if they were in our world. Like clearly they wouldn't just be these super like morally like good people. They would clearly have issues like us. They would have issues, and they're even though they have these amazing powers, they're still people.
Relationships, everything.
Yeah,
and
still
they
have all these
kill.
problems, so.
That's what I like is they kill bad guys. I mean, I'm never gonna like Batman as the number one. He's never gonna be my favorite. I want the Batman movie to be him killing. Like, I mean, I know it's getting into a deeper territory. In The Dark Knight, I think it's The Dark Knight. Is that the one with the Joker?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. In The Dark Knight, he captures the Joker after the Joker kills a bunch of people. He puts him in a cell. And then while he's in the cell, the Joker gets broken out of the cell. A bunch of the cops and other people who are in the cell with him, they all die in the explosion. And then the Joker goes on to kill a ton of other people. He kills Maggie Gyllenhaal. He kills all of these people. And still at the end, Batman captures him and ties him upside down for the cops just so he can then eventually get out of jail again and kill a bunch of people. That is something to me that I'm never going to understand, where like I get the morals of it, but if Batman just killed the Joker the first time he caught him, so many civilians would have survived. And it's just like, speaking of, Joaquin Phoenix just got offered $50 million to do 2 more sequels. I doubt he'll do it because he's Joaquin. He has that integrity, like the true art form. Watch him on, I think he's on Good Morning America or no, 60 Minutes or something recently. I watched an interview of him with Anderson Cooper. It is hilarious.
Oh, yeah.
He is so real. He's so honest. And for so long, he even talks about it. For so long, people thought of him as this rude person. That's why he made that I'm Still Here documentary. People think he's such a snooty person, but like he's not. He's just doesn't want to be in the limelight, doesn't even rehearse with people. He's like, I want to do it in the moment. I don't want to lose that, realness of doing it for the first time. He just does things his way, and I respect him even more. I did before, even more after watching the interview. It starts off with him telling the interviewer, like, I don't like doing these, but like there's many other things I'd rather be doing, but let's talk about,
No, you're right. He's one of like the few like actors of his status that is not only like that, like raw and honest in interviews, but I mean, he really, I love the dude for that. And the fact that he just gives amazing performances. Like he's given one of my favorites is Freddie Quell in The Master, the Paul Thomas Anderson movie.
I haven't seen it.
And also one of my favorite movies. I would definitely check it out.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, it's a trifecta of him,
Philip Seymour Hoffman
and Amy Adams, all just like some of the best performances ever, in my opinion, ever. Like just so good. But
the Joker was, I mean, no comedy elements whatsoever. The Joker was like My Boys.
Well,
it
had some. It had a little bit.
It's so hard. Like, I don't think I could watch it again. It's brilliant. It's beautiful. It was so well done, but it's such a disturbing movie that it's like, I don't see myself just watching it when it's on TV. I mean,
which is crazy that it like, well, I'm not crazy because it's such a big IP and everything, but I mean, the fact that, people were kind of expecting it to like not be good and kind of fail when it became this like, honestly, like critical and audience darling, and then it made like $1 billion on top of it.
Well, Todd Phillips set the highest grossing R-rated movie for The Hangover, and then Seth MacFarlane's Ted took over, And then Todd Phillips took it back by making the Joker. So between the Hangover and the Joker, he's now set 2 box office records for that. That's why, well, I mean, you look at the big people in Hollywood, Leonardo, Kate Winslet, these people, Brad Pitt, Angelina, they're in the 20 million club. Will Smith, they got offered 20 million a movie. Joaquin's getting offered 25 to do each of these 2 sequels, which I still don't think he's going to do. I don't want him to do it. I just don't, you know.
I kind of do. Well, here's the
do?
thing, though. I want like the first one, and if they do it, it probably will be this way anyway. I want these to be so it'll be a trilogy. You'll have a Joker trilogy. I want
Okay.
them to be completely standalone. Like I don't want it to tie into the Robert Pattinson one
Me either.
or any other one.
Yeah.
Just a standalone Joker would be sweet.
My father-in-law, I think he asked that, like, does this tie into Batman or Harley Quinn or Suicide Squad? And it's like, no, these are, and I think these are the Batman of the Joker series. I mean, the Batman, the new Robert Pattinson movie, is an indie movie that I don't think is going to tie into anything. That's what the Joker is. It's an indie art house kind of take of it. And
Yeah,
it
you said it
shouldn't
that
be in anything else. Although I did love, they do show, or like I like in the Suicide Squad how they show Batman.
Yeah.
And they do show him in Joker for like a second, right? Is he in
I
it? I forget.
well, you see, obviously, you see him when he's young because that's how it links
Yep.
up. Him,
Yep.
yeah. So, but yeah, no, I mean, I did like Joker a lot. So, and honestly, like, I would be down to see another 2 as long as, again, like, it's just they're standalone, and he's just so good in that movie. It's like I wanted to see more of him as the Joker, but
Yeah.
again, if he says no, I would also respect that too. So
Read more into it. I mean, to any of the viewers, in the interview with Anderson Cooper, he talked about how Todd Phillips would give him classical music to listen to get into character. And like Todd Phillips is a comedic director. I mean, he did Starsky and Hutch with Ben Stiller and Owen Wilson. This was such a different thing for him. Just like Judd Apatow, he's now going down the serious movie path, and he's getting Oscar nominated for it. And I think that was really interesting. The scene where Joaquin Phoenix gets into the fridge, he pulls everything out of the fridge and climbs into it, completely improvised. The dance scene was like very much Joaquin's artist interpretation of it, and it's just so interesting. Yeah.
yeah, so cool. You think we should, anything else, or you want to get right into the Five Bloods now?
I say yes. I say we got to be close to that point. Yeah. I think this is gonna be one of those podcasts where people say you talk too much about not the movie. But if that's what you're into and that's why you like our podcast, to hear us talk movie facts and movie news, then hey, here's a treat.
We never specifically like defined it, but like we like, so far our kind of setup is, we do a little introduction and then talk about movie news and recent movies we saw, and we try to keep that at like the 20th. Clearly we're almost at 40 minutes now, but like we try to keep that for like maybe a fourth of the episode. So we'll in the future, like whatever comments we get, we'll try to keep that shorter or longer, or maybe even make it a complete, like Mikey mentioned, separately from the podcast, making that even a completely separate like podcast maybe or whatever, or like just like an add-on, if you want to call it that. But but yeah. Anyway, so let's get on to the Five Bloods.
Yeah, I one of the first things I'd say I noticed it, and it's throughout the whole movie. The score is beautiful.
I love it. Yeah.
I mean, it sounded like he got an orchestra to put together the score. And I mean, the soundtrack, the Vietnam War soundtrack, the movie kind of takes place in 3 timelines. It's them in Vietnam, it's them in present day, but then it's also them in Vietnam as they are the age they are today. Like that was very interesting. There would be flashbacks where it was all of them in their 70s, 60s, but Chadwick Boseman was still the age that he had died in. So I thought that was very interesting and kind of trips you up at first, where like, it was kind of a little bit confusing at first. Isaiah Whitlock Jr. Have you ever seen Cedar Rapids? With Ed Helms?
No, I haven't seen it yet. No.
So there's a scene in it. Isaiah's in it. He was in The Wire, which I still haven't seen. He's in The Wire, but there's a scene in Cedar Rapids. He plays this kind of nerdy insurance salesman, Isaiah Whitlock Jr. And there's a scene in it where they wind up almost getting in a fight with somebody, and he steps it up and kind of gets like, in their faces and scares them off. And after the people go away, Ed Helms just goes, "Wow, that was crazy. How'd you do that?" And Isaiah's character goes, people have always told me I can play a very convincing Omar from the hit HBO series The Wire. And like
Oh yeah.
that was one of the funniest movie lines I've ever heard. And as soon as I heard him talking this, I was like, "Who is that?" And as soon as I heard it, I went right back to that movie. So the movie stars Chadwick Boseman, Delroy Lindo. Jonathan Majors plays Delroy Lindo's son. He's the star of Lovecraft Country. Clark Peters, Norm Lewis, Isaiah Whitlock Jr. They're kind of the five. You have Gene Reno in it, which as soon as I hear him talk, I think of Leon the Professional. You can't
Yep.
not think of Leon the Professional, one of the best movies ever made. And then for me, I loved seeing him in this. Paul Walter Hauser. He was in Black Klansman, I believe. I think he was like the right hand man to the main Klansman, right?
I think
He
he was in that movie.
Topher Grace, and then a couple
Also,
other people.
an actual Vietnamese actor in this movie. I don't know if I'm gonna get his last name right, but it's Johnny Tri Nguyen, who was
Quinn?
What's that?
Quinn? Yeah.
Quinn? Yeah.
The last name, Quinn. Yeah.
Oh, is it Quinn?
I'm guessing that's what it is. That's what it's usually pronounced. That spelling is Quinn. Yeah.
Nguyen. Okay, yeah, Johnny Tri Nguyen. He was I know he's obviously been in a lot of Vietnamese films, but he's done a lot of stunt work in Hollywood. Like he's actually done stunt work on movies like Spider-Man 2, and I think also Jarhead, that Jake Gyllenhaal movie.
Yep.
So he's done stunt work on kind of these bigger Hollywood movies, but he's really good in it too. He's kind of like the tour guide for the Bloods. When
that's interesting. He's a stunt actor because he's such a, for the first half of the movie, he's just a very calm and composed guy who's kind of helping them around Vietnam. But, he does definitely prove his action chops later on in the movie. I mean, the movie it's from what I know of Spike Lee, but maybe not, it's kind of Tarantino-ish, where it's a very long movie and it's pretty slow, but the action and the murder and the killings in this movie are very grotesque and graphic. I mean, the first kind of big death that you see is Norm Lewis's character Eddie. He has a very Samuel L. Jackson Deep Blue Sea death, where he's stepping back and he's like, "We got to get our shit together. Well, it's not about this anymore. We are friends. We are family. We are bonded. We can't be doing this." And then he steps on a mine, immediately blows up into 1,000 pieces, and is still
very,
alive.
very bloody.
Still alive for a few minutes with no limbs, but that scene was so Samuel L. Jackson. And like when he's backing up, Spike Lee uses there was a lot of scenes in the movie where the shot that was used, you knew that a bullet was going to hit them, or you knew something was coming up next, which I love that camera work where it's like kind of predictable and puts it in your hands.
Yep.
I thought that was
because it's like really quick foreshadowing in a way. Like it's like right then and there, and something's gonna happen, and
lessens the blow. I mean, literally, kind of like it's gonna happen, so now it's not as crazy, I guess.
True, and it's kind of interesting you mentioned those kind of similarities between Spike Lee and Quentin Tarantino. Even though I don't think Spike Lee is the biggest fan of Tarantino, I know he's criticized him in the past for using certain profanity in his movies or writing it into his movies. But
sure,
but there are similarities for sure. I mean, in even like in the way it's shot or in how it kind of sometimes it gets a little meta. Because I know something that because again, the Five Bloods. What's interesting to me is that it feels like a combination of like almost like everything he's done into one movie in a certain sense, because he has all this the typical thing kind of aesthetic choices he makes. He has that dolly shot, the one he's known for, where he has kind of the camera moving back, pulling back with the character like center frame. It kind of looks like they're floating. He has
breaking the fourth wall, kind of.
It will also like I've seen this in a lot of his movies, and I think he's been doing it like forever, pretty much. But ever since like if a character is talking about something historical, it will like literally, it won't like cut, like for instance in this movie, like it starts off with footage of Muhammad Ali as he's talking about how it's an injustice that we're sending all these people to go die and kill people in a different country we've never met before, and then it ends with Martin Luther King, which is also a good little contrast, I think, because it starts off with more of a negative aspect of it, like we're killing our own people, we're killing other people we don't know, and then it ends kind of on a message of hope, where Martin Luther King is kind of, he gives a famous speech about how like one day, this isn't his America, but one day there will be an America that we can kind of all really appreciate and kind of live in with peace. But yeah, there's all these like literally direct references to history and like, so a character will bring up like a famous black athlete or historian, and you'll see like a legit picture just pop up on screen, like not even like a picture like there that's in the movie. It's just like it's like cutting just to a picture of it or of footage of it, which I like and dislike. I think it works mostly in this movie because we're trying to understand the echoes of war, and like how even though it's been decades and decades since the Vietnam War, it still impacts these soldiers, specifically Delroy Lindo as Paul, who is kind of not taking it the best. So like there are actually like there's scenes where it cuts to some of the violence that was imposed upon Vietnamese people. Like there's like images of like dead children in this movie at some
There
points.
is. It's
Yeah,
very Spike Lee.
yeah,
He kind of throws it in your face, but that's how some people need to be educated. I mean, if you saw Black Klansman, the end of the movie, kind of in the credits, has real footage of somebody getting hit by a car in a protest. And, it's sudden. It almost feels not needed, but at the same time, a lot of people wouldn't watch it on their own. And, in order to really get people to see the horrors of what's going on today, you kind of have to show it to people for them to really realize what is happening. I think that that's very interesting in how he does it. This movie starts with it, ends with it. There's spliced in clips, there's pictures. It's very interesting in that way. I guess I would say there's a lot of splice in clips, which are great. Did you read what the Trump one was? Because it plays into a lot more in the movie. They show Trump.
yeah.
Uh,
Is that when they're all like having dinner in the like one of the earlier scenes, and then Delroy Lindo brings up that he voted for Trump,
he
and
wears a
then
MAGA hat
he wears
throughout
a
the
MAGA hat.
throughout
Yeah,
it. And
and they're
when
they're kind of ragging on him for it. They're like, "Why would you do that? Why would you vote
yep.
for him?" And yeah.
And when it shows Trump real footage, instead of saying President Donald Trump, it says President Fake Bone Spurs over his name.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And then it says, it's all the people behind him holding up the Blacks for Trump signs. And then it has an arrow pointing to Lindo's character, Paul. And I don't know if it's actually him or not.
I don't think so, because I think that's I don't think they even edited, other than like the name and everything. I don't think they
Yeah.
edited that footage at all.
Yeah. So I think my wife and I were talking about, like, do you think Lindo's character actually went to a Trump thing to prepare for this footage? Like, did Spike Lee have them infiltrate one of the things to do it? Because that would be hilarious. But
That would
yeah,
be crazy if that were the case.
the kind of subtleness of, I just like it because I mean, Spike Lee really gives the attention that Muhammad Ali, who was the best fighter in the world but the most peaceful person ever, they give him and Martin Luther King still a voice today. He gives them still a voice, and then kind of shits on Trump, and there's little jokes in the movie like what they renamed Trump, and it's very funny in that. And like you said too, there's a lot of real footage. And the most powerful part of the movie is Lindo's character. From the very beginning, you realize how uneasy he is. He's the only person who's returned to Vietnam and can't look at anybody and not see the people that he was fighting all these decades ago. There's somebody who comes up, I think, asking for money, and he says, "Get out of my face." He gets in a fight with somebody trying to sell him a chicken on a boat, and they go back and forth. Every other character is totally fine with the Vietnamese people that they're being waited on with or whatever. And of course you have the guy you said, the actor, who is their kind of tour guide and kind of setting everything up. Even Lindo's character can't look him in the eyes, and the whole entire movie you realize that he has more PTSD than any character. And then you find out why at the end. I don't know if we can reveal it this early in the podcast, but that I mean, I was in tears towards like the towards the very end of the movie. You realize he goes crazy, he goes off on his own, they find the body, they find the gold, he goes off on his own and he loses his damn mind. And you realize why he lost it is because he is the one who killed Chadwick Boseman. He sees Boseman, he has a hallucination, kind of like if you were to see a water fountain in the desert. He's out in the jungle, he sees Chadwick Boseman. There's a flashback where somebody tried to kill the two of them, and Lindo's character turns the gun to shoot him, and he kills Chadwick, and Chadwick dies. Chadwick's character, Stormin Norman, dies in his arms, and then he sees, all these years later, he sees Chadwick Boseman's character, and he says, I forgive you. Like, I've always forgiven you. It's not your fault. Like, I love you. We are the Bloods. Like, it's the five of us. Please stop blaming yourself. And then the next scene, he gets completely shot up by Gene Reno's people who are in it for the gold. And he kind of dies finally relieved. Like, he finally can stop holding his breath. He can finally stop blaming himself all these years later. And then he dies in that ditch in the same place where all of this stuff happened. And just that, to me, I mean, so horrific and sad and but also beautiful. And just those two scenes together were very powerful to me.
Yeah, I think I love the ending, and I do love how they kind of finish his character and his arc. To kind of go back earlier about more of like Spike Lee's intentional, like political, I guess, choices or to comment on in the movie. I mean, that's one of my issues with the movie, because it's not even about his politics, because we all know from watching this movie and many others like BlacKkKlansman or even Chirac or something, like he's like clearly not afraid to just be really punctual and like be like, this is like, I'm not the biggest fan of Donald Trump. Or, like, I'm not a big fan of this, how America is treating certain people right now. Or like, he's very on top of that, which again, like I can respect, because I like when a filmmaker just goes all out and is like, all right, here's what I believe and here's what I'm going to showcase. But
Yeah.
it was sometimes distracting in this movie, because I think you have like a set of good characters. And again, specifically, you specifically have Delroy Lindo, who gives an amazing performance. He has this amazing arc where he's trying to come to grips with both like his son being there, which kind of like wasn't expected for him.
Yep.
And then dealing
Jonathan
with returning
Majors.
Yeah, returning to a place that, you know, they probably never thought they would come back to. And I think there's aspects like that where I wish that was more of the focus at times, rather than like trying to comment on what's currently going on in our world, which again is fine. It's just sometimes it felt a little distracting, which is an issue I had with BlacKkKlansman. It's an issue I've had with some of his other movies, but luckily, like I said, there are just a lot of these beautiful kind of character moments in the movie with Delroy Lindo and his son, who have this really kind of are really kind of at each other for most of the movie. Because I think but by the way, Jonathan Majors is great in this too. I love him in pretty much everything I've seen, even though like I think his more recent stuff I still have to watch. Like, I haven't seen The Last Black Man in San Francisco, which was an A24 release, nice. Which was really well received. And then obviously, like you mentioned, Lovecraft County, which he's the main star of it.
Yep.
But like I think he sells this character so well in that, you know, he's kind of mad at his father for not really giving him the love he thinks he deserved growing up, and then Delroy's mad at him, as we later learn, because his wife died giving birth to him. So
He's
there's
always
just kind of
his son. Yeah.
There's this legitimate contention they have towards each other, and I think that's to me like one of the stronger aspects of this movie. And then how it ties into the past, because that's also a big thing. How like echoes of the past still reverberate into the future, because again, Delroy is torn up by not only his wife dying, but also by him accidentally killing Storm and Norman, played by Chadwick. So like there's all this that has just been building up inside of him for so long. And, you know, also we should definitely comment on the flashbacks, because I'm pretty sure these were filmed in, I don't think it was digital then made. I think it was actually shot on film. I could be wrong. Do you know if the flashbacks were shot on film or if it was digital but made to look like film? Because
I was gonna say, I mean, it's very easy in this movie to know where the flashbacks are. Not only is the coloring different, but I think they also turn it into widescreen, right? They kind of put up the black bars.
I have it up here right now. So it says the 60 sequences were also shot on 16 millimeter film. So they were actually shot on film, and then which was cool. I love when movies do that.
It was beautiful. I mean, it was like watching a documentary. It was like watching something in school about the Vietnam War.
And because of how like convincing Chadwick is, like you really felt like you were watching this soldier in the Vietnam War. Like it's like it really was well done. And I mean, it's cool how they kind of would cut back and forth between that. How did you feel about the choice to not get younger actors to play the Bloods? Because, you know, other than Chadwick, obviously, like all the Bloods were just played by the same actors.
Yeah,
I don't know how I felt about it. I kind of wish they got young actors to do it, but I get why he chose to just have all of them play their younger counterparts too.
I feel like a lot of the actors in the movie were even made out to be older than they were in real life.
Yeah.
So like I wondered if they could have also made them look a little bit younger. I mean, it would probably be a little bit of a stretch, but yeah, I don't know. I
Well,
mean,
like Norm Lewis is like 57. You know who plays Eddie? Like
okay.
he's so like he would have been like a little kid during all this, and then I think like Clark Peters, they're all like in their late 60s, early 70s. So I think that made more sense. But like I could just tell him like Norm Lewis, I'm like, he looks kind of young-ish, even though technically his character served in the war. But like, I
Yeah,
get that. Like
it
I think
was.
there's a conversation I've heard somewhere I was reading about how like they should have maybe done the same thing like with like that the Irishman did, where like digitally make them look younger or
Yeah,
something.
exactly. With today's technology, that would not be hard at all.
Especially with
I,
with the advent of like deep fakes and all that kind of stuff. I guess you technically could have done something like that, but
yeah, I don't know why they wouldn't have done that. I mean, I'm sure the budget wasn't. I'm sure it was a high budget for special effects, but I think I would say, and I want to hear what you think. I think the reason that Spike Lee chose to do it that way was because he was trying to like. I mean, the movie's also very much a thing on mental health. I mean, that's a big part of the movie is people are telling Delroy's character when he gets back, he has to go to therapy. And he's like, I don't do that. Sit down and talk about your problems. And like the movie really, Vietnam was like the first war where people came home and weren't heroes. And the suicide rate, the homelessness, the drug addiction that came from it. That's what this movie, I think, is also educating us on. It's a lot about present day Black Lives Matter. It's a lot about freedom and all these things, but it's also about kind of the PTSD that these people face. And I think I think the reason why he had the flashbacks with them as present day is that like they never really left Vietnam, even all these years
mhm.
later in their 70s, 60s, they never left Vietnam. So when they're flashing back to where they were, it was like them in present day watching themselves go through these things back during the war. That's how I took it. I mean, what were your kind of thoughts of why he decided to go in that direction?
Yeah, no, I mentioned earlier, I do absolutely agree with that. Where it's and my argument, like, or the biggest strength I found was the fact that it's like, no, like, the war never ends, which is like the idea in a lot of movies, not even just movies based on Vietnam, even though like Apocalypse Now or like Born on the Fourth of July, like, those are very much kind of about the idea that like the war is over, but not for you specifically. You're going to still deal with, direct like actual mental illness like PTSD, but still never going to be able to get over the horrors that you witnessed or like the potential like vile things you might have done.
One of
And
them's addicted to Oxycontin. I
yep,
mean, like all of that was very real to every war we've experienced. You come back and you get PTSD. Nobody really helps you with it. You have to kind of really be driven yourself to do it. There aren't all the resources right there. And now you're addicted to drugs because you threw out your back or something. Like there isn't all of those kinds of yeah, that's kind of been a
well,
tough thing in this country is you don't get the resources you deserve. And that's what this movie I think touches upon.
see, and that's where I think it's less like overt in your face when because you have these four soldiers specifically in the modern day who kind of represent a certain factor of like almost like a failed part of our country where like I believe it's Delroy Lindo who clearly just has dealing with mental illness, dealing with the ghost of his past, having PTSD, who can't seem to get over the past. You have Clark Peters as Otis. You're right. Who I believe he's the one who had the addiction to Oxy, right? Oxycontin, I
I
believe.
think so, yeah. And the other two and the other guys are like, you really got it. Like each one has their own version of PTSD and they're trying to help each other, but they're also not helping themselves.
Yeah, but like I said, so Delroy Lindo with mental, I mean they're all yeah right. They all have mental illness to an extent, but he's the most striking example. Otis with drug addiction, and you have Norm Lewis of like financial difficulties because like you mentioned, he like at first he's like I'll just put it on my card, I'll pay for your hotel rooms, but at the end you learn he has no money.
Hmm.
So like all of them kind of like have this aspect to him that like I think a lot of people can easily relate to, where it's like yeah, it's like a lot of people have economic issues, a lot of people have drug addictions, a lot of people deal with mental illness in some capacity. And so like again, rather than in our earlier scenes or whatever having like these direct like footage of like whether it's President Trump or like all these other news segments, I like when it's just these ideas are just expressed through these character actions, and we know why they're doing it or like why they're acting a certain way. And to me it's like that's when it really like hits home, when it's like that's when you and also it's like a good display of all their acting abilities and all their performances. um Also, again, another aspect I felt like could have been expanded upon more, and is is the team they meet up with, who specifically it's played by Paul Walker Hauser, and then Melanie Thierry, I believe, who's a French actress, and then do you know who the other guy is? Jasper, right?
I can't pronounce his name. Yeah, he plays Seppo. Jasper Pakonen. I feel
yeah,
like I've seen him in a few things too.
Yeah, he looks very familiar, and he so all three of them, they're specifically a team that goes out and tries to remove old landmines.
Haiti, is that his name? Haiti.
I think so, right?
Yeah, her character is kind of this heiress to a couple family fortunes, so she spends her time helping people. I think, I don't mean to cut you off. I think that I agree with you here, is that felt kind of forced and connected, where like they're out at, I mean, Vietnam does have a lot of bars. Like they're out at a bar, and out of all the bars, Jonathan Majors meets her. They start flirting. And then right as they start stepping on landmines, her and her two, people just happen to be there, and they're like, let us help you with the landmines, right after somebody else just got killed from a landmine. And like,
it's a little too narratively
forced,
like convenient. Yeah, too forced, too convenient, and again, it's almost like we didn't get enough time with them for them to like really feel like they should have been there, because it's like, I get it, I get why they were there, and obviously like, later in the movie, like at the end of the movie, when the money, because the cool thing about the gold is, and another cool thing about the movie is that I really liked, is the whole idea, when they first, in the flashback, when they first find the gold, which was supposed to was American gold being sent to a specific sector of the Viet Cong that was helping the Americans with the war. So that was paid like in a sense for reparations, but the CIA helicopter crashed, and that's how they found that gold. And then the idea was they were going to bring it back to America and give it back to their community, give it back to their people. And as they find all the gold much later on in the modern day, there's more of this idea like, hey, we should just take this for ourselves. Like, I think there's even a good line about one of the characters, I think Norm or one of the characters was like, hey, let's not forget, we're giving this to our people. We're, this is for liberation. And then Delroy goes, yeah, our liberation. Yeah, so he kind of thinks it's more of an individualistic sense later on. So it's this idea, there is kind of that idea about money corrupts all, about like this kind of the power that comes with this much potential wealth, and that now that it's in your hands, like, maybe I'll just keep most of it, rather than kind of dispersing it and kind of doing something really useful and progressive with it, I guess. But then at the end, luckily we see that the money is given to good organizations.
Black Lives Matter, $2 or $3 million goes towards that. The Heidi and Paul Walker Hauser, their company gets $2 million to go take care of more of the mines out there. And as they're like presenting their check that they received, there's like kids missing limbs, which is a real thing in Vietnam. Is there's still all of these mines that civilians and rice farmers are stepping on, and I thought that was really great. Yeah, I think my only two downfall, I absolutely love this movie, absolutely loved it. I think my only two things were their connectedness was a little convenient, like you said, and I think them finding the gold and Storm and Norman was like so quick that like I didn't want a 4-hour movie. I didn't. I loved it as the 2.5. But like, Jonathan Major's character goes to shit in the woods, and as he digs, he hits a gold bar. They find all the gold in 3 minutes, and then they find the body. That felt a little forced, but I really liked, there's so many dilemmas and character arcs in this. I love that part of like, they find his body, and that is the whole plan, is to go there and bring him back to American soil for his family. But then they kind of just like put his skeleton in a bag, and then the whole rest of the movie is that dilemma of the gold bars. We're going to split it evenly. Should Paul's son get a quarter of it or whatever because he's now there, or should they split it because they're father son? And the whole movie turns into a greedy kind of we didn't really come here for Storm and Norman. We came here for the money because that's what we felt we deserved. But really, they went there for the closure. They went there to, and the scene at the end where Storm and Norman's family is standing there, and the plane lands, and you see the pictures of him, and the current day soldiers are carrying his coffin, and he's finally getting buried and laid to rest. Like I of course didn't want anything in the movie to happen that happened, all of the death in it, But if the guys didn't die over there, and it's fictional, so I feel like I can say this, if all of the people didn't die, would that money have been allocated to the Black Lives Matter and the bomb squad, or would it have just been so they could have gotten out of debt and further bought more oxycontin and driven
Right.
themselves more into a depression, because of everybody dying and what happening, that his body was able to be laid to rest. And who knows what would have happened if all of the Vietnamese people and Gene Reno's party got the gold bars and killed everybody. Storm and Norman's body would have stayed in Vietnam forever. And because of the sacrifices, I think we talked about splice things that were spliced in. Not that I doubted it, but in one of the pictures they show Milton L. I believe Oliver the Third. He was somebody in Vietnam. I think he was the first black man to receive Purple Heart or one of the medals that he got.
Right.
He jumped on a landmine to protect a bunch of people and save them. Completely true, completely real. They show his picture. They honor him in the movie, in which kind of feels random at first, but then at the very end, Isaiah Whitlock Jr. dives on a grenade that Gene Reno throws. And at that scene, Otis had already been shot. You don't know if Otis is going to survive. And Isaiah just jumps on the grenade. All these years later, he still has that kind of soldier mentality of, hey, there's a grenade. I'm not going to second guess this. I'm going to save my brother right there. And he jumps on it, immediately dead. And then Otis's character is able to be the one survivor who gets to go and get to know his daughter. Because,
Yeah.
that was one of the storylines.
I gotta say too, that scene when Melvin does jump on the grenade, like it happens so fast because he just goes grenade, jumps on it, and then you see Otis react, and it's so sad because you're like, and it's like that to me that was probably the most impactful death because it just is so quick, and you just spent all this time with this guy, and now that's it. He just died, and again to see the sadness on Otis's face is like, oof, like
Do you think Melvin did it not only because that's what soldiers do for soldiers, but at that point, later on in the story, you learn that Paul, had the PTSD he did. You learned about the drug addiction. You learned about Eddie being flat broke. In the movie, you learned that Otis's daughter, he goes to visit this prostitute that he was with all these years ago in Vietnam. She now has a kid. It's a mixed race kid. She's a woman now in her 30s or 40s. And he goes, is this my kid? And he tells them later on, when they're all coming clean, he's like, I met my daughter. Do you think that Melvin jumped on that grenade to be like, I don't have much. You need to go start this relationship. You need to go make up for lost time. You are the one who has still something to live for.
I could see that.
Yeah.
I think there's enough to chew on to where you could say that would be the case. Where like in that instant, like that probably just like flashed through his head.
Mhm.
And it was like, no, like you have something to live for. Maybe I don't. And then also I think it was just still his soldier instincts jumping in, where it's like I got to protect the team. Why kill a bunch of why have this hurt and potentially kill everybody when I could be the sole person it takes out, I guess.
All those years later, I think that's so interesting. Is like you're always a soldier. You always have that mentality to protect and save those around you, even when you're no longer enlisted,
Yeah, true. But honestly, like I was gonna mention this earlier. I just kind of wanted to cover more ground first. But see, this is a movie that we asked the question in the last couple episodes at the end where it's like, would this work? Would a sequel work? Would a prequel work? Would it be good if it was a television show or something? And this is a good example to me. I almost feel like this would have worked a little bit better had it been like a mini series. Like if it was like a Netflix mini series, if it were like,
Interesting.
if it were like 4 parts or like maybe 4 to 6 parts, like all like an hour long each, because I think there is a lot more you could have explored. I think not only each of the actual Bloods, but the Mind group, Paul Walker. I think that group could have had a lot more exploration. Even the Jean Reno's team that him and his like team that takes him out, I think they could have been built up a little bit more. So I think that almost this could have worked like a little miniseries better. And it's not like Spike Lee hasn't dabbled in that before. Spike Lee has the the one, the Levees Break documentary for HBO, which
Mhm.
I believe that was like a multi-part documentary. So like
It wouldn't have
he has delved into that before.
it wouldn't have been hard to be greenlit either. I can see where you're coming from as a series, like a one season, 4 or 5 hour, thing. I could agree with you in that, and I think that it could be greenlit because look at Steven Spielberg and Tom Hanks and Band of Brothers. Like there's been so many fictionalized but also kind of documentary World War One, World War Two miniseries. I even think Band of Brothers is coming back in some capacity of something. But yeah, I could see Spike Lee going to a network and saying, I want to make this as a one season miniseries. I could see that. Yeah, I mean, it could have been longer. Could have been longer, so we got to know the mine group. It could have been longer, so we got to know more about Jean Reno's character. Um, yeah, it definitely could have been, but I liked where it was.
Well, even Storm and Norman, Chadwick Boseman's character, if like that, maybe even if there was a miniseries, he could have been fleshed out a little bit more. But even with that said, I agree though. I think the heart of this movie is it still works really well. Like you still get that sense of like redemption from our main guys who understand at the end what happened and what they're doing and how. And again, I think that scene you mentioned earlier, the ending when um we actually see what's his name, Paul Delroy Lindo's character confronts a vision of Storm and Norman and how he forgives him. He said it was okay. This wasn't intentional. Like this is just the result of a lot of bad things happening, and that's just the way it is. And I think that works. That scene
Mhm.
is beautiful, and like it's
Paul was never not angry in the whole movie, and then he breaks down in tears and apologizes. And I watch things with subtitles or captions, but like the amount of times that he said "I'm sorry" and "I love you," and all of that, and to get that closure. And yeah, I mean, it's not only a movie where people get back together; it's a movie where people return to the scene. Not at all related. I understand. I'll preface it. Titanic. I mean, Titanic. She survives the Titanic, and then all these years later goes back to where it was, and the
Mhm.
scene of it, and the Alvin, and she drops the necklace back into that same water and returning to it. Titanic's one of my favorite movies of all time because I love that history. This is that kind of movie too, where not only are they reuniting, but they're being brought to where all their demons are. And like that's another thing too, is they didn't need to go back to Vietnam. They probably shouldn't have, but they went back to get the closure and to protect each other and help each other. And it was interesting too. At the end, you see Jonathan Majors, who's a teacher. That's why he had a crush on the French woman because she helped people too, and all of that. He's a school teacher, and he reads the letter that Otis gave him, and it shows a flashback to the opening of the movie. Pretty much, they arrive in Vietnam. They're hanging out of like a sunroof, and Paul gives Otis a letter that says "To my son," like in case I don't make it, and it almost seems in a way that he never planned on coming home.
Yeah,
I don't
true.
think any of them planned to get bombarded by Vietnamese people who wanted to get the gold or Jean Reno's people turning on him. I don't think any of them expected to be at war again in Vietnam. But why did he write that letter to his son that said, "Hey, in case I didn't make it, why, like, was he planning something else the whole entire time? Was he going to kill himself? Was he going to die there and I guess trade places? Maybe he wanted to get Storm and Norman's body back, but he wanted to die there because he was the one who always felt like he should have been the one who was, buried there. I don't know.
Right. No, I like that. I like that a lot. And I've heard a lot of people talk about Dora Lindo getting some recognition,
Yes.
potentially like
Yes.
maybe getting an Academy Award, and that's something I would agree with fully because he I think he is kind of the heart of this movie in a way.
Score, cinematography, and Lindo's character. The scene where it's not breaking fourth wall. It's not like the scene that you said, the tracking shot where they're looking at the camera. They're not
Right.
breaking fourth wall. They're not acknowledging that we're the viewer. But the scene where he's looking at the camera, which is Chadwick Boseman, and he has that 2 minute scene and dialogue, and the emotions, that to me, I watched that twice, that scene.
Oh yeah.
That as soon as I saw it, I said the same thing. I said, like, this needs to be Oscar nominated for his portrayal. And I don't know if anybody else will get an Oscar nom. They might not. It's kind of hard to tell, but he was the star of this movie. He deserves, I think, a Best Actor.
Yeah.
For
absolutely.
that, the character arc, and that's what you want to see. You want to see a character change in a 2-hour movie, and you're rooting for him, then you're not rooting for him. He ties up the bomb squad, ties up his own people, disowns his son, who all this son ever wanted was his dad to love him. And it's just, the whole movie is all over the place, not in a bad way, just the ups and downs. I think the first thing I thought when the movie ended was it's a roller coaster ride. It's a buddies getting back together comedy where they're drinking in Vietnam and they're reminiscing and having a good time, and then people are getting blown up and there's another war and there's death and nonstop death. And I think, his movies are sandwiched. The opening of the movie with Muhammad Ali, the end with Martin Luther King, and then the kind of meat in the middle is the movie. I like that kind of formula. I like how it comes full circle.
Yep, I agree.
And the soundtrack too. The soundtrack, I love I don't think they were in it, but CCR, Creedence Clearwater Revival, and like.
Oh yeah, and they had they even had Flight of the Valkyries, which was used in a similar way to that of Apocalypse Now.
Oh, nice,
Which obviously there are references to that movie, and I forget the name of it, but apparently there are some very direct references to a old Humphrey Bogart movie, and which again, like, this idea of is not new. Spike Lee a lot of times directly references older cinema. It has characters that specifically reference a movie. Like, I know a good example is Radio Raheem in Do the Right Thing. He references a line from The Night of the Hunter because he has the love-hate fist cuffs or whatever they're called, and he like literally recites that a certain like line of that movie. So like he's that's kind of, again, that's just another thing that Spike Lee does, which a lot of times works, and it's kind of cool that he makes those direct references. But I mean, overall, like, I think The Five Bloods works. I again, that central kind of concept of the echoes of war coming back to haunt you, trying to deal with that, trying to get to overcome that, and also overcome with a world that might not love you back as much as you wanted to, living in a world that isn't quite up to your standards, and trying to change it. I think a lot of these ideas do hit home, and
there's so much to walk away with from this movie, from Vietnam and PTSD to Black Lives Matter. I mean, there's so much there.
Yeah, and like I said, even though I do have some issues with some forced scenes, or even some of the politics, and kind of being just in there and not feeling that they felt, feeling a little bit forced, I do think that this is pretty much a success. I think definitely one of the better Spike Lee movies I've seen in a while. I liked it a lot more than Black Klansman, which was his prior movie. And I mean, and it also just has a slew of really great performances. So like, it's one definitely to check out. Like I said, it's right there on Netflix, ready for whenever you want to watch it. It's worth checking out, especially in these kind of highly like stressful and political times. I think it's kind of worth it.
Yeah, so. It's educational for so many purposes, and shows you the struggles that America's been going through and is still going through, things that are recurring, things that are newer, things that kind of went away and have come back. I get made fun of by friends and family because I say everything's the best movie. Uncut Gems is the best movie of 2019. This, right, to me, I watched a bunch of fun horror movies that were fun, and that was it. This to me just resonated. I don't know. It just, a lot of it hit me and was so powerful. And I loved this movie. And I mean, I think we should always, besides Uncut Gems, we should always be able to find some kind of thing we didn't like with the movie, but it can still be near perfect. It can still be a fantastic movie. And I would say it's one of the best movies I've seen in a while. And Chadwick Boseman in it, which is just like iconic. Just hearing his voice again and all of that. And I mean, it's that I just really loved. And Jonathan Majors, I'm excited to see him in more. I'm excited to see Lovecraft Country. I need to watch The Wire. I want to see more of Isaiah Whitlock Jr. If you haven't seen Leon the Professional, Natalie Portman's first movie, I think she was the youngest actress to get nominated for an Oscar for it. It's Gary Oldman back when he played a bad guy. I mean,
Yeah.
God, you can't. What else is he a bad guy in? Was it Die Hard?
No, that's Alan Rickman.
Yes, yes.
I think. Well, Prisoner of Azkaban, right, for Harry Potter, right?
True,
That was
true.
Gary Oldman. Yeah.
True.
And also, he was fucking wasn't he? Yeah, he was Dracula in Francis Ford Coppola's version of it.
Oh, he was?
Yeah.
I mean, it's so funny. I think a lot of our generation knows him from Friends, like the scene in Friends
Oh.
where he's. Do you remember that episode? He's working
I think
opposite
so,
of Joey, and he's like spitting on Joey because that's how he enunciates.
Yeah,
and he's like a drunk and a hot mess. I think that's great. And then people know him from Harry Potter, but also Commissioner Gordon. So like a lot of our generation knows him as more of even Harry Potter. You know, like it knows him as more of this good guy and this kind of like wholesome character. And then you watch Leon the Professional, and like he is psychotic in that movie. He is batshit crazy. And you're just like, why are more people in Hollywood not saying, I want Gary Oldman to be this serial killer or this bad guy?
No, he's good at it for sure.
Dark. Yeah, so check it out on Netflix. Yeah, you can watch it on Netflix, and keep up with us on social media. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, you know, we had a couple people tell us that they didn't like Cabin in the Woods, and then they rewatched it after our podcast and had a new feel for it. I told one of my best friends, David, that he should watch it. He was like, I don't know if I've seen it. I'll give it a shot. And then he texted me after, was like, this is one of my favorite movies now. I love it. So, you know, that's kind of how we feel, is if we get you to watch a movie and you love it and you have a new favorite, that's awesome. If it gets you to think differently or give another movie a shot, that's great. And I guess kind of we'll end by talking about what's coming up. October, I'm having a baby. Tom's moving across the country. I just moved across the country. Shit's crazy. That's why we're not as every Wednesday. But yeah, October, we're going to do horror movies. Reach out to us on social. We're going to put up a poll, but reach out to us and tell us which horror you want to see. I know I really want to cover maybe like the Saw franchise or shitty straight to DVD sequels that I still loved, like the Wrong Turn franchise.
Anything slasher
Hostel.
genre, old, Universal monster movies. Like I think
every Godzilla that's ever been made. Yeah,
I think if we run the gamut and really cover like as much as we can, that'd be fun. And like I said, so reach out, or we're gonna do a poll probably pretty soon. Probably have a list of stuff that hopefully people will vote on. And do you want to quickly kind of just cover what we might have in store for our next episode? Or
so Sunday, but kind of our formula of our podcast. Tom and I are going to come on and talk about a movie we just watched. Sometimes we're going to have somebody come on to talk about a movie that we all just watched, whether they know a lot about it, like Mark with Uncut Gems, or we just have a friend who made a short film and we want them to kind of promote it at the beginning and end and hear their take. And then the other thing we're going to do is try to find people who just acted in a movie, who just directed in a movie. We're going to try to find people who are in the industry, because Tom's worked on sets I don't really know a lot about. I would love to work in the industry, but I don't know how improvisation works versus sticking to script. I don't know a lot about how you film the last scene first and the third scene second. Like I'm interested to hear more about that. I'm interested to hear about craft service tables and what they have. So
the best place to be.
Yeah, so next week we're having on one of my friends. Her name's Annie Newton. She just starred in her first featurette. It's a movie called 12 Days of Christmas. And it's funny. It's like my favorite genre. It's basically college kids come back for Christmas break. They all kind of reunite. You have that kind of movie. Two friends who have been, like lifelong friends. They get drunk at a party, they sleep together, and the next day they wake up and she's pregnant. So the movie is kind of that kind of dilemma, is what do you do in that? We're in college, we're young, we're friends, we have no feelings for each other. What is this going to be like? I think the movie was filmed in 2017, maybe. So we're going to have her on, talk about what it was like from getting the script to seeing the movie that is now getting accepted into festivals. We're going to tell you where to watch the movie. And if you have questions too that you want us to ask her, as far as, check out the trailer. And if you want to know things about where it was filmed, how long it took to film, what it was like for an auditioning process, what it was like connecting with the character that played opposite of her. I would say that. And then I think we might try to get in one more episode in September, maybe, where we're going to have my friend who's a theater actor in New York come on and talk about Cats, the movie, which we haven't watched yet. And then also talk about Broadway plays turned into movies turned into Broadway plays. And we're going to pick his brain too. I know Tupac's one of my favorite rappers. He had a Broadway play. Big Fish is my favorite movie. It had a Broadway play. Scrubs, they've been talking about bringing to Broadway forever. So like, I don't know, Tom, what is a Broadway play that you want to see as a movie, and what is a movie you want to see as a Broadway play? That's what we're going to get into. But what do you have anything in mind?
I mean, I do like Broadway plays. One of the only ones I ever saw was Hedwig and the Angry Inch.
Okay, yeah,
which is actually a movie. So like I know I don't know if I got who directed it, but that is a really well known or really well received movie, and obviously a really renowned play.
Mhm.
But yeah, I don't know. That's something I'll think about for that episode, because I'm sure I could think of a lot of examples, especially for potential movies to be made into plays.
Mhm.
So yeah,
that could be a 5-hour podcast where we're like,
that'd be a fun one for sure.
Jaws as a musical.
Oh yeah, I've only ever heard of I've heard a lot about Cats. I've not seen it though. I kind of wish I saw it in theaters, even though like I know like nobody saw it. So like, because I think
Yeah.
that could be a fun movie to maybe one day that will be like end up becoming like a shitty cult classic. I don't know. Well, I'll have to
I think it already is. I think that's a movie Tom and I will watch and then be like, thank God for this podcast, because without it, we would have never watched this train wreck of a movie.
Right.
So yeah, we're also gonna have some of Tom's friends on who are actors, singers, short filmmakers, and a lot of things like that. And I know we had a friend of ours, a mutual friend and friend first, now fan, reach out about wanting to be on our podcast as a guest. So we're gonna bring him on. And yeah, October is gonna be horror. We're gonna have guests on. And then we're also just going to have us talking about Rosemary's Baby, which is your favorite horror movie.
Yep.
And then mine will probably be more talking about torture movies. And you know what I'd like to talk about? Martyrs.
Oh yeah.
Have you seen Martyrs?
Yes.
Okay. One, we have to talk about how it got turned into an American movie and was awful. But I would like to talk about it because it is the most disturbing movie I've ever seen in my life. It gave me nightmares for a long time, but the way the movie ends and the payoff makes the whole entire movie understandable. It's the most gruesome torture movie I've ever seen. And I haven't seen a Serbian film or like the real Top Band movies. I've seen Cannibal Holocaust. I'd love to talk about that. Have you seen Cannibal Holocaust?
Yes, I've seen it.
I'd like to talk about that and Green Inferno, Eli Roth's version of it. But Martyrs, I'd like to talk about, because you watch movies where there's no payoff and it just ends and you don't know what their motivation. The end of Martyrs was just brilliant, simply brilliant.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about it, but yeah, you know, a lot of good stuff to look forward to, you know, and yeah, can't wait to record some more episodes and, you know, hopefully hear back from people. We'll try to kind of keep up with our social media posts. And so hopefully you can comment on the stuff that we kind of put out there for the future. And, you know, if you want to follow us, check out our social media pages. We're on, like you mentioned, we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram. Just search Weiliotis Podcast, you'll find us. So.
Watch our YouTube.
And on YouTube as well.
Yeah, we got the video on YouTube. Even if you just pull it up and minimize it at work, you know, YouTube is a great way to not have to sign up for Spotify or Stitcher or Apple Podcasts and just listen to the same thing as well. So thank you to our few fans so far. We got a couple hundred followers, and yeah, I'm so excited for October. It's my favorite month. It's Halloween. There's so much good horror out there right now. I know Candyman just got pushed, which is probably fair because they want to, you know, make some money in theaters. But yeah, a lot to talk about. So
truly. But anyway, yeah, thank you all for listening. We'll be back soon. Bye.
Bye, friends.